Hi everybody, welcome to Healing with Marcus. I'm Marcus, and today's video is about the last few years of pandemic and the pressure that we are under right now. It's this is not going to be a super long video, but it is about, I want you to feel compassion for yourself. I want you to hold yourself in light. I want you to see that these last few years are very difficult to live through. On many levels, since 2020 in March, on many levels this has been extremely difficult. Now, of course, the system of the matrix of keeping of mind control has been going on for a long time. But the tools have gotten sharper and sharper and sharper. They've gotten more skilled at creating basically MK Ultra methods, but for society as a whole. MK Ultra, if you don't know it, is from the 1950s and 60s when the CIA were developing torture methods, and they were figuring out how to control people, mind control. And they were doing it through using of LSD, and quite a few people claim that Manson was involved with those experiments, which may be why it could turn so dark, what he was doing as well. And then we can also, so MK Ultra, 1950s, 1960s, methods of torture, developing ways of controlling somebody. And then we can look at how we infiltrated different countries throughout in South America and in Europe and other parts of the world with the shock and awe method, where there's shock to the system and then comes the release. And usually in a torture setting, if somebody punches you and punches you and punches you, and then they say, you know what, I'll stop punching you if you do this or that. Most of us would, okay, I'll sign whatever. Most of us would, okay, whatever you say, as long as you stop punching me. And if we look at the psychological impact of these last few years, how the news before the pandemic came, before the lockdowns, we had the years of the other president where bombardment of our psyche was going on like nothing else. And the demonstrations were of course beautiful. It was of course beautiful that people express when there's oppression. When people can stand up and say, no, this is not okay anymore. It's beautiful. But if we look at the bigger picture, it sure looks like those demonstrations were also orchestrated by some powers that don't want to come out in the open. So looking at the bigger picture, we can see that where I live here, during the years of the former administration, there were fireworks going off every week, sometimes every day. And these fireworks were huge. They made the windows shake. And it kind of felt like war times. And when I was walking down the street, there was an unmarked, some kind of security car with an officer in it. This lady who was sitting there day in and day out. And sometimes I waved at her and she looked at me like I was crazy, and I realized I couldn't wave at her because that would get me in trouble. So when we look at the demonstrations for those years, which is a beautiful movement in itself, the idea of the BLM is beautiful. But we can see how it was fueled by the media. We can see how every week we found out about another person being shot and killed. And it was a terrible time. The psychological pressure, especially on the African American community, was immense. My friends were crying on social media about, oh, I can't believe it's happening again. I can't believe it happened again. That was immense pressure during the years of the Trump administration. We also had the demonstrations all the time, right? At least every month. And the same week that the new administration came in, We had January 6th, which has a lot of question marks around it, yes. And then then BLM stopped. It hit the news that whoever was in charge of the BLM had been doing something wrong with the money. Bought a house somewhere. And the BLM movement just stopped, vanished. The same thing happened with the fireworks. They just stopped. There were no more fireworks. And for these last few years, the only time I hear fireworks now is around 4th of July and New Year's, which is the normal time, right? So it's kind of fascinating to see that if you look at the psychological warfare on our minds, it was playing out somewhat wild, but most of us weren't paying attention because we get sucked into that state of fear. We believe in what the news are telling us. It's hard to see past the propaganda machinery. So then what is both very sad, but also very interesting, is that the BLM movement stopped when the current administration came in, right? About the same week it happened. And then if you Google or look up on any other search engine for that, if you don't like Google, the amount of unarmed African American people who get shot by cops, you would think that it lowered because BLM got quiet. But in 2021, that number went up from 2020. And in 2022, that number doubled again. So if you consider that, and that we don't hear a single, almost not one iota in the social media stream compared to how it was during the previous administration, then we can start to see that there is absolutely a way of leading our attention, guiding where our attention is supposed to go and how we're supposed to feel about the world. Because at the same time as the current administration came in, the pandemic also went away, right? A few months later, the president announced that now the pandemic is over. And now they're talking about it coming back. So here's another interesting thing, right? We had BLM, we had large upheaval movements in our society that were, of course, at their root cause, beautiful, amazing, but fueled by media forces, actually. And then we go into what's happened, and then this current administration came in, COVID went away, BLM went away, seemingly things got calmer, no more fireworks. And then a week after the pandemic was over, Russia attacks Ukraine. And now that's our new focal point. Oh my God, there's a war. And that war is going on for a while until it's losing traction. And now we're moving into election season, and at the same time, the opposition is getting arrested. At the same time, pandemic is coming back. Lockdowns are coming back. If you can't see that this is all a game, well, I'm not going to judge you, but I hope for your sake that you can see beyond the surface level of this charaderie. It's a charade. It's a theater play. It's a game. It's an illusion. And if you can see past it, if you can begin to realize, oh my God, this really looks like an illusion, doesn't it? Kind of looks like a movie or something. If you can see that that's all that is, and then you move your awareness and attention into yourself, here's where it's easy to get lost. And this is where it's important to come back home and use your discernment and go on a spiritual quest, go on a spiritual journey, grow into your higher vibratory field. So that all the things that I have been talking about here that seem so negative, they seem so dark, it seems so harsh, that all those things don't blow you over. That you don't have, because we don't have to go out and go really angry the other direction. Because quite honestly, then we're still stuck in fear. We're still stuck in the same energy that we're trying to get away from. So instead, we go on a spiritual journey. Instead, we begin to come back home. Instead, we begin to see our own triggers, our own trauma. Oh, why am I being so triggered by this? Why am I being so angry when I hear this or that? Let me sit with it. Let me look into my soul and learn. Learn about myself so I can ground deeper into Earth Mother. So I can become another proponent of life on this planet. So I can become another proponent for Earth Mother, for the connections that we have to natural life, to indigenous tribes and people, to a natural way of life that is not controlled by the matrix, that is not in the grips of fear-mongering, war-mongering media groups and financial powers. Yes? Of course, there are more forces behind that, beneath that, but those are the forces we see on the surface level. So, this got pretty dark, didn't it? It's not meant to be dark. It was meant to point out to you that it's okay if we are feeling stress right now. It's okay if we're feeling heavy right now. It's okay to feel the pressure of the world, because the propaganda machinery is doing everything it can. The modern whole society scale MK Ultra operation is doing everything it can basically to break us. Basically to break us down so we become more malleable and conforming to what they say we should do. And I would like to suggest to you that you can come back home. That you come back home to yourself. And from that place, you make up your own mind. And if you are afraid, and if you feel better to inject yourself with something, that's for you. And if you feel like, no, that doesn't sit right with me, I don't think that's good for me, then that is right for you. But this has to be on you. We grow in our inner understanding, our inner framework. We grow as human beings. But we can only do that when we free our mind from the matrix, when we free our mind from that mind control game that's going on. All right. But that's also where compassion comes in. This is what I just said. Compassion for yourself. Compassion for others. We are living through some hard times. We're living through some very difficult times. But it's always darkest just before the dawn, just before sunrise. Yes. All right. Much love, everyone. Have a beautiful, beautiful day. Click like and subscribe if this spoke to you. And I'll talk to you again soon. Namaste and aho.